I guess that stage when you were diagnosed at the age of 22, and there was that moment there, obviously, where you've had quite a daunting couple of days there where they've given you a meter to take home to continuously check your glucose readings without any insulin so that they could work out or calculate your insulin requirements. And this was kind of the initial stage in your kind of journey where you identified how potent a physical activity could be for you in terms of managing your diabetes. And it kind of removed that doom and gloom of that information you've been provided about the potential complications of the disease.
Yeah. So the day after being diagnosed was the hardest day because I woke up as somebody else. You know what I mean? Like I had to identify with the new me, which was somebody living with type 1 diabetes. I was begging for insulin, because I felt so crap and I was like thin and tired. I knew that if I got insulin, I would start to feel better. So, I was begging my doctor for insulin, but they said, just be patient, just check your blood glucose for a couple of days. Let's develop some trends and patterns, and then we'll address it with insulin. So I had to be patient. But yeah, the day after being diagnosed, probably the most important moment, I would say maybe of my life, because I went from rock bottom, down and out, couldn't believe what had just happened in my life, thought it was a life sentence, thought life was over, hated everything about the idea of my future, to almost the complete opposite. And the reason why is because I went to the gym and I'd had breakfast that day. My blood glucose spiked up as I was told it would because I wasn't giving any insulin. So I was expected to do that. Went into the gym, just did a great workout for an hour. For that hour, I didn't care about the diabetes. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just so in the moment, had a great session, got out of the gym, pricked my finger to see what my blood glucose was. I was expecting it to be 25 because that's what it was when I went into the gym. And to my surprise, it was between 5 and 7. It had dropped down to pretty much the normal range. And I was like, how did this happen? I couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. So that moment there was the moment that I realized exercise is very powerful. It may be one of the most important management strategies going forward for me. And it sort of freed me to this. I was able to see a different future. So I no longer felt like a slave to this diabetes. I felt like, actually, you know what, I can probably regain some control here. So very important day for me. And the next few years, even still, continual self-experimentation with different types of exercise, how it affects your blood glucose level, how it affects your insulin requirements. It was just an amazing journey. But the very, very important moment for me to figure that out on day one. I mean, I imagine a lot of people never get to experience that much of a drastic moment in their lives. So I was grateful for that one.
And I think the really important thing there is actually now you've flipped your diagnosis on its head. As I said at the start of the podcast, the glass half full. I can imagine in your circumstance, it would have been really easy to kind of take the other end of the spectrum and say, feel defeated and go back into your shell. But this was really the turning tide within your life, because although you had already trained to become an exercise physiologist, now you're going down the path of becoming a credentialed diabetes educator, obviously surrounded by your mother and father who are doctors working in the diabetes space. And now what you're doing, with your online training programs and the way you're influencing other people's lives online, this has really become the hero of your story. And I think you're a real inspiration for a lot of people. And it comes back to this commonality of exercise and the fact that movement has really helped you take charge, take control of your life. What kind of exercise did that session involve? You do a lot of weight training. Did you want to talk about maybe the type of exercise you do and maybe how this benefits diabetes?
Yeah, I mean, this particular workout was a full body, all of the sort of compound moves. So think about, squats, thrusters. I was into CrossFit at the time. So I was doing I'm not saying that everyone has to do these exact things, but the nature of the exercises I was doing were very multi-joint, large muscle groups, all working together, all of the big leg muscles, back muscles, full body workout, right? So push-ups, burpees, pull-ups, squats, deadlifts, cleans, all of that sort of stuff, right? Again, you don't have to do these specific exercises, but the theme about the workout was contracting a lot of muscle tissue across the whole body. And the reason why this is so important,
muscles too.
big muscles, but also not just doing like lower body, upper body. It was a full body. And the reason why that is so important is the mechanism of action of how, how did my blood glucose go from 25 down to 5? Like, I wanted to know the answer. And I had an understanding from my exercise physiology days, but this is the thing, when you're learning out of a textbook compared to the lived experience, it's a vastly different lesson. So essentially what happens is when you contract your muscles, you get the opening of these glucose gateways, right? Which usually the only way to open these gateways is with insulin, whether your body produces it naturally or if you inject it as somebody with type 1, the insulin is the key to unlock the gateways. But the body is very smart and it has another mechanism, which is, I mean, there's so many names for it, but essentially it's exercise induced. And the word is GLUT4 translocation, which basically means GLUT4 is a gateway. It's basically inside of the muscle cells. It's lying deep in the muscle cell. Signal for that movement of the gateway to open, contract your muscles. And I think the reason why this workout worked so well was because I was opening so many gateways because I was contracting so much muscle tissue, right? Had I gone into the gym that day and just did a set of bicep curls, I might have seen my blood glucose go from 25 to 24, but 60 minutes of just contracting all this muscle, opening all these gateways. And also it's twofold. It improves insulin sensitivity. Now, whilst I wasn't producing much insulin, because I was in my honeymoon period, I probably still was producing very, very, very small amounts. And the increased insulin sensitivity from the workout, in combination with the tiny bit that my pancreas was able to produce, was enough to get me back into the normal range. So it was this beautiful twofold combination of glucose gateways opening up and getting more insulin sensitivity. So again, anyone has access to this. You don't have to have diabetes for this mechanism to work. It works in everybody. It's an amazing part of the human body.
Incredible, isn't it, the body? And to simplify kind of what you've said there for the listeners, a really good analogy that we can use, which you've already addressed, is that lock and key model, or the lock and key analogy, where the insulin, which is produced by the pancreas, acts as the key to unlock that cell door to the muscle. And in your case with type 1 diabetes, you weren't producing those keys because your pancreas wasn't producing the insulin. And so in a normal circumstance, just like if I drove up to the local Westfield and, had to go in the boom gate, I'd have to take the ticket before I drive through. And then on the way out, put the ticket through to let the boom gate open up. So in normal circumstances, we need insulin to get in through that gate. But what you're talking about, those GLUT4 transporters, we don't need insulin. We can push glucose into the muscle just purely through muscle contraction. And specifically, as you say, using a lot of those big major muscle groups is really going to assist that process, isn't it? So it would have just, your mind must go,
Oh, mate, I remember like looking at this number on my glucose meter and like jaw dropped, and then it just turned into a smile. I was like, oh wow, this is good. How good. This is incredible. And then, the sort of the dark side, which I haven't spoken about a lot on many podcasts, but I guess we can talk a little bit about it now if we have time.
Yeah, sure.
The dark side of that moment was that I became a little bit obsessed with exercise in terms of managing my diabetes, and I leaned on it too hard, and I began to like sort of fear and not want to use my insulin because I thought, well, you know what, I can just out exercise this diagnosis. And I was so wrong about that. And I ran into some pretty hard brick walls. But basically, I just want to let people know that as powerful as it is as a tool, you've got to use it responsibly. Like if you overuse it, it can do the opposite. And there's a lot of people who actually purposely don't take their insulin. And I know it's more common in women with type 1 diabetes because they want to lose weight. And that is such a dangerous way to do it. Your insulin is not something to be feared. You got to use it responsibly. It's life-saving. It's absolutely important. Using it safely in conjunction with exercise is the key. So you can't just lean too hard on one or the other. It's finding that balance. And I learned the hard way, but eventually I figured out how much exercise I can do on a daily basis that was actually serving me, not causing me to go down this deeper, darker hole.
Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the other champion kind of ideas surrounding diabetes is balance is everything, isn't it? Your carbohydrate intake, insulin, exercise. I don't think anyone can truly appreciate just how much of a balancing act it is for someone like you on a daily basis. You think about, you have like a full-time job, you go and train, You have other things in your life, other commitments, other relationships, and so forth. But taking on type 1 diabetes is almost like a full-time job in itself, the amount of decisions you have to make on a daily basis, and that can wear you down mentally as well. So in the early stages, it might sound like a good idea, but you're going to run into hurdles. Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's a slippery slope, because in the beginning, it's like you're getting this, beautiful carrot dangled in front of you. It's like, exercise. Remember, you've got this here. You don't need that. And it's just not true. You need both. Different modes of exercise will have different impacts on blood glucose. And I didn't know that at first. So for me, exercise was a hammer and everything was a nail. I was just going after every blood glucose level that was out of range with exercise. I would just go, okay, I guess I'm going for a 5K run, or I guess I'm going to a bodyweight circuit. You do that every single day, more than, sometimes it was 2 or 3 times a day, you're running into some serious trouble here. So I figured it out, but it took me a long time.